Welcome back to February's Tech of the Month. This month we're going to be looking at some super snazzy S-Works shoes, the lightest Brompton ever made, the 2022 Pro Kit, and the brand new highly controversial Cannondale Synapse. We put your comments, questions and concerns to the brand and they gave us answers by the bucket load, so stick around for that one because you're not going to want to miss it. Today we're being hosted by the Southdown Social Cafe here in Winchester, so if you're in the area or if the King Alfred's Way has brought you through, do stop by because it is a lovely spot. First up though, as promised, those super snazzy S-Works 7 shoes. Michelle, what can you tell me about them?
As you can tell from the name, the Specialized S-Works 7 lace shoes, they come with laces, and that's a big change for Specialized. They've moved away from laces. We haven't seen them for a while on the roadside. They did have the Recon lace shoes, so they had brought them back within gravel, which is actually slightly more contentious because in gravel the demands are very different. They're going to get a lot muddier, a lot wetter. In the road they've been very, very well received. There are a lot of really big fans of lace shoes, myself included, and I believe Sam as well.
Love lace-up shoes, always, yeah.
Yeah. So this is now Specialized's 4th offshoot of its top-level S-Works shoes. They've got the Exos, the Vents, the Aries, and now this lace version. So it feels like they're really looking to specialize into specific niches. And actually I was with Specialized yesterday and they've said that a lot of the reason is they feel that road shoes have got incredibly expensive. These are the cheapest S-Works shoes and they're £300. So it's a pretty serious investment. And they feel that, you know, if people are going to spend £300, they want exactly what they want. They're not popular with everyone. I know, Stefan, you're a really big Boadile fan.
Yeah, for both racing and ultra long distance, I find that the adjustability, like while you're riding other Boadile, is something that I wouldn't really want to sacrifice. Like whether it's tightening up before a sprint, before a hard effort, before a climb, or laces aren't something that I'm too fond of. I can see why they would be quite good. Like with all those points of adjustability all the way down the foot, like you can really adapt the shoes to your feet, maybe better than with a Boadile, but yeah, just being able to adjust things on the fly, for me, yeah, I don't think that laces are quite so good, or they don't offer that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I like that they've got 12 points of engagement, which really helps you dial the fit just bang on exactly as you want it. And they've also reinforced the eyelets, which I think is a good thing because that's an area where, again, you've spent a lot of money, you don't want these to wear out really quickly. For me, that's really helpful because there are other solutions. So I've actually been using Lake shoes a lot recently, and they've got that moldable carbon, and that is incredible. It's almost a kind of, once you tried it, you're not really going back, right? They're just that fit, but having laces does allow you to get a bit closer to that because you can really tighten it where you want to and have it backed off a bit as well.
Yeah. And these are am I right in thinking that these are the lightest ones they've done as well? Usually you wouldn't get the lightest ones for their kind of the cheapest and like range in that shoe. So I mean, I guess that's a benefit, would you say? I guess it is.
It is, yeah, absolutely. Like laces are lighter than boas without a doubt.
So what about the weight of them? How are they coming in at compared to the others?
They're almost the lightest within the range, but they're not lighter than the Vent shoes. Although the claim on here is 236 grams, so there's not a lot in it really. I mean, if you're quibbling over 6 grams in your shoes, then I hope your diet is beautifully optimized. But I mean, our pair, we weighed, they're size 44. And they came in at 482 grams for both.
Okay. So, I mean, in terms of stiffness, what are we looking at? Are they kind of the same as the others in the range?
Yes, the stiffness ratings within shoes is kind of a hilarious thing in itself, really. In that they're rated 15 on Specialized scale, but you can't, these are not comparable scales, so you can't compare Giro's scale with Lake's scale with anyone else's. But within Specialized's own arbitrary scale, they are 15, which is the same as the top level shoes. Which, I mean, we have had testers in the past at Cycling Weekly that have said they found that a little bit too stiff. Okay. It's horses for courses. It depends how long you're riding, where you're riding. I find them great. I really like wearing them. So, you know, they'll be comparable. If you've worn the other Specialized shoes, then the other S-Works shoes, it'll be a comparable experience. In terms of colours, there is white and black, which is the standard, and then they always bring out one slightly more jazzy approach, and that is coral and cast amber, they're calling it.
So what is the price like compared to the Vents and the other shoes in the range?
So it does vary by region, just bear this in mind. So if you're in the US, it may be slightly different, but the UK, well, Actually, I've got that as well. So the S-Works vent in the UK is £399 versus $425 in the US. And these come in at £300 or $325 in the US. So yeah, it's £100, $100 in order to save a handful of grams. So, you know, these, yes, they're expensive, but if you like laces, they're coming out looking like a good option within the range.
So from lightweight shoes to lightweight Bromptons, Stefan, what can you tell me about this crazy titanium 7.5 kilo bike they've brought out?
Oh, well, exactly what it says on the tin, essentially. So Brompton has released a new bike. It's calling it the T Line, and this is a range of T for titanium, a range of 2 titanium bikes, and one of them has been built to be the lightest ever Brompton that Brompton has produced at 7.45 kilos. And the other one is a little bit heavier. They're still benefiting from the same sort of like innovations. There's a lot of new technology in these new Bromptons, but it's set up to be a little bit more practical for day-to-day with mud guards and more gears and that sort of thing.
So apart from that titanium frame, what else have they incorporated to get that weight down so low?
Well, it's carbon is being used fairly extensively throughout the build as well. So we've got carbon cranks, we've got a carbon seat post. But what's quite interesting is that for the Brompton, longevity is very much, it's a bike for utility, you know. And so it's not just being built to be light for the sake of being light. Being light helps, like, you know, you can pick up the bike a little bit easier, get it onto the train, get it on and off for public transport, and also for riding around the city. And so like functionality is still central to this Brompton. It's not just like a concept Brompton almost. And so the carbon seat poster comes with a steel sheath that's 0.3 millimeters thick, and that means that when you're just sliding up and down within the tube, the carbon is protected, but it's also a little bit lighter weight, like 0.3 millimeters of steel. Like, that's not going to work as just a seat post by itself. It needs to have the carbon inside to strengthen it, which is quite inventive and really quite interesting that Brompton's developed.
So compared to previous models, how much weight's been dropped from what they'd had previously?
It's fairly significant. Before, the lightest that you could go for was around about 9.5 kilos, and so to drop it down to 7.5 of a very lightest build, that's a pretty significant change,
isn't it?
And it comes fairly largely from the titanium and the carbon components. But what's also quite interesting is that they haven't just focused on making this bike lightweight. They've taken the opportunity to develop it in certain areas, and so they've redesigned the hinges to make it forward that a little bit better, and so the hinges are now self-aligning. And also they've made an integrated sort of carry handle into the saddle to make it a little bit easier to carry about. And so there's a lot of things that they've been doing with this Brompton just to make it that little bit more livable as well. So it's not just lightweight that they've been aiming for here.
I suppose it's part of a progression, isn't it? Although it's probably significantly more expensive than the other options, and it maybe not the most practical with a single gear. It's maybe that, you know, it allows Brompton to then move forward.
And that hopefully, like, we could see the prices sort of starting to trickle down a little bit. Once, I mean, they've set up a new factory in Sheffield for producing these bikes with a titanium specialism that they do have there. And so, like, once that's all set up and the production is streamlined, perhaps we could start seeing this coming into more Bromptons and bringing the weight down for at a lower price than these ones, as they are quite expensive. So the T Line 1, which is the lightest one without the mud guards or with the single speed gear, comes in as £3,750 or $4,795. And so the T Line Urban, which is a little bit heavier, but it's got those extra components, and so it's coming in a little bit more expensive, and that's £3,950 or $4,995. So they are very expensive, much more expensive than your standard Brompton.
So moving on, we're approaching that time of year when all the pro kits and pro bikes are being released. Now everyone's going to have their own opinion, and I wanted to get your guys's. So Stefan, start us off. Who do you think has the worst kit?
Well, I think that the Team Bike Exchange kit, I mean, I don't want to be rude, but the blue shorts, the white top and the fade between them, it looks a little bit like Israel startup kits, like has kind of like bled with the wash a little bit, you know what I mean? Like the blue, like transferring a little bit into the white. It's, I don't think it's the best, to be honest.
I'm happy to be rude. It's awful. It reminds me of a lot of things, actually, but it's kind of got a bit of an ice cream vibe, you know, like it doesn't feel very fast.
For a normal kit, it might be fine, but for a World Tour team, you'd think they'd have a little bit more imagination about it, and it's just not hit the mark. So I think we're all agreed on Bike Exchange being the worst. Michelle, the best, who do you think's rocking the best look?
I think it's a predictable answer, but it's going to have to be Canyon. Canyon SRAM's kit. I mean, the last kit, I'm sort of tied between which one I like more. I think I probably prefer the last one very slightly more, but I think maybe that's just because I'm quite used to it. Okay. It's just got that really like fresh, vibrant crypt vibe, and it makes just racing feel exciting.
It's definitely up there with one of my favourites for sure. Stefan, how about yours?
I think that the Team Bahrain Victorious kit, it hasn't really changed, but it's like grown on me, I think, with this season. Maybe it's like the kits around it, but like, I don't know, it stands out like that little bit more, the red, the blue stripes. And so, yeah, maybe it is the other kits that have been released that, yeah, it's just making it sort of like pop that a little bit more. But yeah, I think for this season, Bahrain Victorious.
Oh, fair enough. See, I'm going to go for Bora. I'm a really big fan of kind of the block work, and it's quite different, and to be fair, I've always really liked Bora kit, but I think that's probably going to be my favourite. Onto team bikes. Michelle, who's your favourite team bike?
It's got to be the SD Works bike. I mean, I'm partial to, well, I'm less partial to the new tarmac versus the old tarmac. I've been pretty honest about that, but it's still a tarmac and they still ride great. So although I preferred the last one a little bit, it's a great bike. So that's number one. And then that colour, purple's my favourite colour. It looks great. It's got a sheen. I would love to ride that bike. It looks amazing. I'm
going to back you up on that one, but I'm going to go slightly differently, but towards the quick step bike. Basically, I mean, it's so similar to the SD Works bike, but it's just blue. And I think that's the only differentiating factor between them. Obviously the specs are different, but I think for me, that's definitely my favourite bike. Stefan, what are you thinking?
Okay, this might be a little bit out of left field again, but yeah, with similar themes from the Bahrain Victorious kit, you know, the red and the sort of like geometric shapes like within that. Team Bike Exchange's bike, the Giants. Yeah, I think they're looking good with the blue and the shapes like within it. Yeah, for me, I think that the bike that stands out is Team Bike Exchange's Giants this year.
Well, one thing we have seen as well in the women's side, we've seen a lot of kits looking pretty similar.
There was a lot of controversy over which ones the UCI had nodded through and which ones they'd shaken their head at. Obviously, there were issues last year with multiple teams having kind of purple hues that looked very similar, especially from a helicopter angle, and made it difficult for race viewers and commentators. And we all thought, oh, that'll be over now because we'll have new kits. And they've all changed, but we've got the same problem in a different hue. So I wanted to understand a bit about why this was. And I spoke to the head designer at Le Col. So they previously sponsored Drops, and Drops has now got new sponsors, and they're now at Le Col Wahoo. And she has some really interesting ideas. So the first question I had that I put to her was whether it was to do with WGSN. So WGSN stands for the Worth Global Style Network. Okay. And it's something that I only became at all aware of a couple of years ago when I visited a brand's HQ. And they are industry websites that you pay a subscription to. Nearly all brands, probably all brands, pay a subscription to, and it basically defines the choices that we as consumers believe we make every year. One of the big colours predicted by WGSN this year is pink orchid. And you know, we're seeing that. We are seeing those pinks and yellows. So it seems to me like there is a little bit of a convergence there on colours that are going to be fashionable. And then the other point as well is we've seen a lot of colour bursts. So much more colour bursts than we do straight lines. And she had a really, really good explanation for that. In most men's teams, we've had straight lines and just, you know, with logo in the middle. Women's bodies vary a lot more than men's bodies. Men, although you get, you know, bigger men, smaller men, they tend to just go straight up and down a bit more, right? And women don't do that. And one of the quotes she said was that, you know, if you put a box on the front of her jersey, you wouldn't see the box. And I thought that was great. If they're all wearing the same kit, but the kit looks dramatically different on different riders, it's not going to look as stylish and as sort of as professional as it's meant to.
You're not going to have that instant brand recognition, are you?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
So for Bike of the Month, it's no surprise that it's going to be the recently released Cannondale Synapse. Now, when this was launched a couple of weeks ago now, it came out to a lot of controversy, and most people that saw the bike weren't entirely happy with some of the decisions that might have been made for them. However, there were parts of the bike that they absolutely loved. You know, the elephant in the room basically is smart sense. People really don't like smart sense. I don't think they like the fact that it's been chosen for them But then there's elements of the bike that they absolutely love, like the 27.2 seat post, the threaded bottom bracket, and the fact that you've got external cables around the head tube. Do you think this is kind of inevitable change, or do you think actually Cannondale have gone way too far and are potentially driving people to other brands? Michelle, what do you think?
I mean, the reaction was very negative, which implies to me that they are going to be driving people to another brand. Although I would caveat that with, you always get a vocal group that can be the minority. And it's sometimes very easy to look at those comments and think that that's what everyone thinks, and actually it's what 10% of people think or 5% of people think. However, I understand a lot of that knee-jerk reaction of, I don't want the decision made for me. I sort of agree. I don't want a brand to choose what type of light I'm going to have. I don't want them to choose where my rear light is going to be. And I certainly don't want them to tell me that I'm responsible for how fast the person behind me is driving with the radar. So yeah, I don't really like the front light's 350 lumens. We're told that it is actually brighter than 350 lumens, which it appears brighter than 350 lumens. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but I've seen a picture.
Yes.
It does look very effective, but in that picture, and we don't know what conditions the picture was taken in. So yeah, I feel that I want to be able to make my decisions myself. Sure. And I think that's what a lot of people feel. However, when you look at the e-bike market, they come as standard. And people find it very useful, and you only have to charge the one battery. You're not sort of messing around looking for where you left your lights because you've actually forgotten, they're already attached to the bike. So I can see a potential progression there. And I think a lot of the reaction is knee-jerk and a bit of retro grouching, but I can also fully sympathise with it, and I understand it.
That's it. And I think it's fair to say as well that with SmartSense, this is the first iteration of SmartSense, and it's clearly not going to be its final form, and it's only going to get developed. So I think the things that we'd want to see are better battery integration, because we've spoken about it with gravel bikes before, with internal storage within frames. It's not going to be difficult to mount a battery inside, which is, again, easily accessible. I think the design of the lights as well, I think that has to be improved. And also the options that are out there, because some people do need lights that are brighter than that, depending on what you're using the bike for. Now, we did put all this to Cannondale, we did ask them about it, and they did say that at the moment they're designing SmartSense in conjunction with Garmin and Lezyne, but in the future there is a very good chance that other manufacturers and other third-party manufacturers are going to be able to design and work on that SmartSense system. So I don't think it's always going to be Garmin and Lezyne. I think there's a good chance that we'll see things from other brands. But for the time being, you are stuck with the choice that comes with the bike.
Extremely interesting though that they chose to have this newer modern technology, and then they took a back step that's been very much applauded by a lot of people. It's not really a back step. But they have returned to technology that's been appreciated in the past. So 27.2 proprietary seat post, threaded BB, and cables that are external at the head tube. And that's been hugely popular. And I wondered if it's just that they didn't want to be seen to be going like full bore progressive. They haven't done everything. They've done this one new thing, and then they've returned to the things that people liked from older technology.
Yeah, I can't imagine there would have been any positive comments if it had still been a push fit with integrated head cables with a proprietary seat post. I don't think there would have been a single positive comment about the Synapse when it was released if they had done that. So, but I mean, it also shows though that manufacturers are listening to what people like and don't like, and then are changing their bikes accordingly. So also coming on to battery life, this was another thing that people really weren't a fan of. I think the shortest running time, so if you've got everything on and the lights running on max, the battery's going to last between 3 and 4 hours or so. But Canon did come back and say, well, actually, it can last for 20 hours, but that's if you've got the lights on their lowest setting. And I imagine if there's not many cars around you, so the radar's not having to work too hard. Yeah,
I mean, to be fair, the battery life would be infinite if you just simply turn them off. So it's...
Yeah, super true, super true. So I think that's one thing that, again, they're going to have to develop as SmartSense kind of gets older, is incorporating better battery life. Because we asked them, for an endurance bike, when people are out on the bike for a really long time, you're going to be riding for more than 4 hours, and you might need your lights on full whack the whole time. Now, Cannondale did say, well, you might want to charge them mid-ride. Not something you could do while on the bike, so that would mean a cafe stop. So I think there's a bit of an impracticality there. Now, if you've not been convinced by what Cannondale have said regarding all of the concerns around SmartSense, it seems like they don't actually care if you don't buy the Synapse, because when we asked them about their response to the reaction to the new Synapse, they did say, well, there's plenty of bikes out on the market, and if you want to buy something else, then go ahead. So, I mean, slightly worrying when in the same week you've got Canyon releasing their own endurance bike, but really, if SmartSense isn't for you, it seems like Cannondale don't really mind if you shop elsewhere.
Well, it's been quite a while coming, the Endurace. Like, the previous model has been around for quite a while, but even with that, Canyon's gone for a very iterative approach. There's been no sort of major rethink with the Endurace. It's small tweaks. Some of those small tweaks we're sad to see with the press fit bottom bracket. It's not changed to threaded there, which is a little bit of a shame to be missing out on. For the people who are fans of the partially internally routed cables, so externally routed around the handlebars, it's coming in at the down tube around the head tube. That's the system that the Endurace is running. The tyre clearance has been broadened out fairly considerably to 35 millimeters, which it wasn't too long ago that would be almost what you'd expect on a gravel bike kind of thing, but now we're seeing this on endurance bikes. One thing to note is that Canyon are selling an aluminium model, and so that's got its own effect on the price and bring the starting prices down even lower. But even when it comes to the carbon models, and so a like-for-like comparison, with the carbon Endurace CF7 versus the Cannondale Synapse, both carbon, both with a Shimano 105 group set. The Canyon comes in at about £1,200 cheaper than the Cannondale, so that's what the price of the integrated system is. It's about £1,200, and so it's really quite significant the price there, even for those comparable models. But for the starting price, for entry level, Canyon are just blowing Cannondale out of the water with that one.
So that's all for this month. Thanks again to the Southdown Social Cafe in Winchester for hosting us. If you've got any comments about the Cannondale Synapse, do let us know down below, because we'll be continually interested to hear what you have to say about it. If you enjoyed the video, drop it a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and we will see you again very soon.